Good morning, everyone. As promised last night, I am going to go ahead and start doing my live video. A lot of people ask me how I get down to the shading, like on my portraits and different designs that I do. And it's really not all that difficult, but the main thing is just to use the right tools and to have the right feel for the egg carving and the design. Make sure that you're not using too heavy of a hand. I really don't know what else to say. As the video goes on, it's going to be pretty loud because my compressor is noisy, and of course the drill sounds like a dentist office. Also, when I go to change bits, I will let everyone know what I am doing, what I'm changing it to, and whatnot. With me, as always, is my faithful little companion. He wants to learn how to carve too, but I guess he's sleeping. He's Stewie. But anyways, there's Stewie. He's already crashed out. He was looking at me, but he stopped. Okay, anyways, I was working on this egg last night, and it dawned on me that I should go ahead and just stop working on what I was doing so that I can do the shading. So I already started on it, and since this isn't the greatest example to show from beginning to end, I'm going to do that later on in the video and try to finish it up. For the actual video that I'm going to do, to start off, I'm going to work on this one. Now, this is going to be a night light for a customer, and it's just going to be all down to white. The image is all white. It's a simple carving for the most part, but I will go through all the steps showing how I do the outline, how I take off a large chunk of dark material, which is the outer layer, and then I will be showing how I get down to the white with this one. And all during that, since even though it's going to be all the way to the white layer, I will be showing how to shade the lower green layer. Okay, so bear with me. So on all of my carvings, I pretty much deal with only 3 tips, and the one I start with on almost all of them is the 1.1 millimeter ball carbide burr. You can't really see it in that video because it's so small, but this is the 1.1 millimeter carbide ball burr. I will use this to just go over the outline and to start the cut, and then when I go down to white, I will also use it to go around my outline and carefully go down to the white layer. When I'm done with that, you'll see that I will change to the 1.5 millimeter ball burr. And it doesn't seem like 0.4 of a millimeter is that much of a difference, but with the larger ball burr, I am able to remove a lot more material a lot faster than with this. And with this one, since it spins at such high speed, I run the risk of popping through a lot easier, and I don't have the control I do with the larger ball burr. So let's get started. Go ahead and cover your ears or listen to music or something. Okay, now keep in mind I am only going to the next layer, which is the teal or gray, light green, whatever you want to call that. Each egg is different, so they have different shades of color. But I'm not trying to go through the white right now. I'm just following the line that I already have drawn out. If possible, just use one continuous line. Try to avoid picking up and going down, picking up and going down, picking up and going down. Same thing with tattoos. You know, the artist is always trying to just keep one continuous line to keep it consistent. Because this has a radius, of course I have no choice but to pick up, but I'm trying to keep it at a minimum. One of the tricks I use when I'm carving something that has a design similar to this is I will carve the main outline first, and then I will go to whatever extremity is on the design. The reason I do that is because sometimes people will carve the one piece and then just follow the line, and when they come back to this, it doesn't necessarily line up, and it kind of messes up the, I don't know, I guess messes up the flow of the design. So you'll notice what I do now, I'll just do the outline of the cat first and then go back and do the tail. That way it's a consistent shape. Okay, the outline of the design is completely done down to the next layer. So what I'm going to do now is change up to a 1.5 millimeter ball burr, and you'll see what I'm using that for here in a second. Okay, Sorry. So now I'm just going to remove everything that's going to be white in the design. If this design did not require white, I would also use it to take it down to the blue layer. For beginning carvers, it might be a good idea to not mess with the white right away until you get a feel for your tool, for the egg piece itself. When I first started carving, all I did was just go down to the next layer, and it took me several months to finally feel comfortable with designs requiring any of the white. So, you know, don't rush yourself. Just learn the fundamentals, and then you'll be able to do everything else soon enough. So here we go. Now, for some of you, it might seem like I'm just going all crazy on this and just being real aggressive with taking off all that material, but I'm really not. I'm kind of letting the weight of my hand and the tool do the work as I'm carving this. If you have a good quality burr, it really just does the work by itself. You don't have to be aggressive at all. As a matter of fact, the lighter handed you are, the better, because on my particular tool, the bearings are somewhat fragile, and if you have a really heavy hand, you're putting a lot of pressure on that bit and the bearings, and you can wear out your tool a lot faster. So I can't express how important it is to have good quality burrs. That way you're not making the tool work too hard. Another thing I should let you know that I'm doing right now is right underneath the dark layer of the eggshell, there's an extremely thin layer. It's kind of like an ashy color, and as soon as you start carving the dark, you'll reach that ashy layer. All I'm doing is going just below that to get rid of the ash, and so don't be fooled into thinking that I'm really taking it down very deep right now, because I'm not. I'll do that in a minute and I'll explain why. Okay, there's that ashy layer I was telling you about. I'm just barely going below that layer when I'm taking down all the material right now. Okay, so there's that design with the main design. I don't know what I'm trying to say. There's the main design that's visible with the outer layer removed, I guess is what I'm saying. Now I'm going to go down to the 1.1 millimeter burr again that I used to draw out the outline. And I'm going to go over the outline again with the white, or with the 1.1 millimeter burr, and I'm going to take the outline down to the white layer. Normally at this stage I would go ahead and wash the rest of the paper off of the egg and clean the egg so I can have a good surface to look at, a nice clean surface to look at. But because that'll take me a few minutes to go wash it off and bring it back and dry it off of all that other good stuff, it would waste time on the video. So I'm just going to go ahead and go down to the white layer here with the paper still on there. Okay, now I need to add that this is the part, if you're going down to white, you have to be a lot more patient than I was before when I was just doing the initial outline, because it's real easy to pop through the white layer, and you have to keep a really close eye on the color change. I don't know if you can tell or not, but there's the white layer. Now I'm going to go continue that outline to the white layer on the entire design. And then after that, I will go back with the 1.5 millimeter burr and start taking the rest of the material down. At this stage, once you're reaching the white layer, you'll see the color change from this shade of green to where it gets really, really light, almost to the white. As soon as that happens, then you really need to slow yourself down and just barely skim the surface. And then once the white is revealed, stop there. was doing the initial outline only to the blue layer, I'm going to call it the blue layer, I was encouraging everyone to try to use one continuous line as much as possible without picking up and going back down. And when you're going down to white, it's honestly the opposite. You don't want to do as much a long continuous line because the radius of the shell, you're inevitably going to put more pressure on certain points, and that increases your chance of popping through the white. So when you're going down to the white layer when doing an outline, you kind of want to pick up and just brush. Just feather it a little bit and pick up, and then you'll just keep an eye on the color change. It's also important for me to tell you that even though it might not look like it when I'm going back and forth like this in the same channel, that I'm not actually carving or removing material as I'm pushing up. I'm lifting it ever so slightly and then moving back and then drawing it towards me. So I'm kind of like scooping it towards you like you would ice cream. I love ice cream. Anyways, don't want to push as you're removing material, because that also increases your chances of popping through. You want to be able to see where you're going with the tip and not pushing away. Okay, another tip here is when I'm carving, I use my little finger to hold my hand steady. I rest it against the shell and I'm able to be a lot more steady with my hand. When you're doing a large surface with all white, as everyone knows, that layer is about as thin as paper, so it's very easy to punch through. You want to be extremely careful where you're placing your finger, because if you place it over an area that is already down to white, and maybe you're removing some other material to take it down to white, and you've already done the spot where your finger's at, you want to make sure that you're not putting too much pressure, just enough to steady your hand, but not to actually rest the weight of your hand on it, because you can punch through. Unfortunately, I've done that with a couple of my egg carvings that I've done, and it really sucks, because when you're going down to the white layer, it pretty much means that you're on the final stretch and you're almost done with the egg, and when you punch through, basically you have to start over again. A lot of people have asked me why I don't just go down to the white right away when I'm doing the initial outline. And the reason for that is because when you have your score marks already from the initial outline, this dark layer that you left here kind of acts like a little bit of a stop. Now, you don't want to rely on it too much because your tip will jump over it and start scratching the surface. But it does act both as a physical wall and a visual wall, so you know where you need to be at when you're scoring, when you're cutting down to white. Also, another reason is when I'm cutting down to white, I like to go in at this angle from the left and then carve towards my left, as opposed to carving down to white here starting from the right. And the reason for that is because if you're coming in at this angle, you're going to be able to get a much more crisp line because you're going into it this way. Now if you're coming at this angle, you're going to have a very, very slight inconsistency from the black to the blue to the white, because the shaft of the tip is going to make your ball go farther away from this wall than if you're just doing this right here. So I don't know, it's all personal preference. Okay, normally to remove this material down to the white layer, I would jump up to a 1.5 millimeter ball burr, but because this tail is so thin and narrow, I'm going to stick with this ball and take it down to white inside the tail only. I'll have to do that every once in a while when I have really tight areas that have to be in the white layer, like my sugar skulls. When I have a lot of real intricate designs, I'll have to use the 1.1 millimeter burr to take it down to white, only because of the limitations of the design. Okay, now if I was keeping this at a blue layer, which obviously I'm not going to be able to because I took the tail down to the white, but anyways, if it was a design that I wanted to only do down to the blue layer, I don't want to leave it real scratchy like that, so I will go down, I keep saying that, I will change to a green burr, green stone. Some people like to use the white stone. It's just a matter of preference. I end up burning the shell with the white stone because it's too smooth and it doesn't really move material. But with the green stone here, this is what I use to smooth out that. I'm not too sure how much you can tell on the camera, but from where I'm sitting, I can tell that this area here is very, very rough looking. And that's okay for some designs. Some designs you want to make it look like, you know, it's hand carved or it's carved wood. If you're doing crosses that are supposed to appear like they're made from wood, then yeah, you would want to leave it like that. But many designs need a smoother finish. Let's see how close I can get. There. You can see that it's a lot smoother right there. It's still going to leave some fine lines on there, but when I'm finished with my designs, I always spray a few coats of a clear lacquer that is UV resistant, and that helps to smooth the finish a little bit. You're still going to see some little scratches and imperfections, but that's all part of being handmade art. And it kind of gives it character. Well, since this design is going to go down to the white layer, I'm not going to spend too much time smoothing out the blue. because, well, it's just going to go down anyway, so I'll remove that in a second. Now I'm just going to go ahead and show you how I do the shading when I'm using that blue layer. I use the green stone, and where I want darker tones, I'll just leave it alone. I'll smooth it out with the green stone just enough to get the scratches out, and then I will put more pressure on the other areas that I want lighter, and then I'll just gradually blend from white to dark, and it'll result in a shaded contrast. Now, just because this stone isn't as aggressive as the carbide ball burrs or even regular diamond burrs, don't be fooled into thinking you can't pop through the white on this. It's very, very possible to cut through the white, so you still want to have a very light touch when you're doing the shading. Okay, so now you can see that I've got a nice little base here of white. That's where I'm going to start my shading at, and I'm going to slowly just go up to the very edge here, and you'll see how the grade changes. Okay, I changed my mind. I was going to go from light to dark as it comes to the bottom of the moon, but instead what I'm going to do is go light on the edges, and then the center spine will be where it's darker. So you'll be able to see the shading a little bit better. I'm not sure how much that's really translating on that, so I'm going to go get a spray bottle and spray it, and you'll be able to see the colors a little bit better. Okay, here's what it looks like with a little bit of a gloss on it. After you spray the clear acrylic, that's pretty much how it's going to look. It's going to be shiny like that, and it'll bring out the shading much more. If you look at the difference between the cat that is untouched and where I did some of the shading, really it's all just about blending. Now, because that's what I use for my portraits a lot, to get the cheekbones, the nose, the forehead, you know, all the different contrasts and the shadows in my portrait carvings. That is the technique that I'll use for almost everything. I hope all of that made sense. Now again, because this design is going to go down to the white layer, I'm just going to get rid of everything I just did. I'm going to go to a 1.5 millimeter ball burr. That's the burr that I prefer to remove a lot of material. That's the same burr that I used to go down to the blue layer after I did my initial outline. So I'm going back to that burr, and I will start removing the blue layer. But you'll notice I'm not going to go all the way down to white. I could, but when I go to polish it, or not necessarily polish, but smooth it out with the green stone, I run a much larger risk of breaking through because I'm already at the white layer. What I'm going to do now with the 1.5 millimeter burr is to start removing the blue layer, and I'm going to pay attention to the color change. Once it starts getting really light, that lets me know that I'm getting very close to the white layer. Then I'm going to stop. You'll see in the video. Oh, I should point out that on areas that are real small like this, where I'm not going to be able to get the green stone in, I will go ahead and go to the white layer, but I'm not going to use the burr to go to the white layer on all the other wide surfaces. Just where the points are, where the green stone won't be able to reach. So I'm not sure how well it's showing up on the video, but I am down to where I can just barely see the blue layer. I'm not too worried about making it smooth right now, because when I use the greenstone on it, it's gonna smooth it out anyway. But I also do not want really deep channels and valleys either, because it just puts a little bit more stress on the greenstone, and you run the chance of breaking through a little bit easier when you're going down the white layer. So I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the rest of the moon. Take it down to just above the white layer. I'm not able to really see the comments very much, but every once in a while I'll be able to look. And yes, Robin, this is a carbide ball burr, and it's 1.5 millimeter that I'm using. Okay, I think you guys get the point of what I'm doing right now. I'm not going to bore you with me going all the way up the moon. Right now I'll just go ahead and get that one part that I just did and take it down to white using the green stone. Francis, the reason I'm removing my shading is because this design only requires white contrasted against black. I only did the shading to show people my technique on how I achieved the shading. A little bit later, in a few minutes, I'm going to go ahead and do some more shading on another design that I have ready. Okay, if any of you have worked on the white layer before, you know that this is the point where you need an extremely slow and steady pressure on the egg. Because I'm holding this stone at an angle like this, I want to be very aware of where the edge of the green stone is. This part right here, the back. Because if I'm cutting here, if I'm holding it too much of an angle, you'll see that it's going to hit the edge of my design right there. And that could ruin it. That'll take it down to the green or the blue layer, and then you don't have a nice crisp edge. So be real careful on where the entire length of that stone is when you're taking it down to the white layer. Don't forget, you have a wall right here that is very vulnerable to being hit with this stone. Also, because of that wall that's there, you'll see that I'm going to take only half of this area down to white, and then I'm going to turn it around and then take this area down to white. That way I reduce the risk of hitting any of my edges with the bottom of that green stone. So there you get what I'm going to do with the rest of the moon. I'm going to use the 1.5 millimeter carbide, take the rest of that material down to almost white, and then I'm going to use the green stone to finish it off and make it smooth. When it's all done, I'll wash it with some dish soap and warm water, get all the glue off, get all the dust out of the pores, and then I'll cut the main shape out, smooth up the edges, and then I'll gloss coat it, let that dry for a couple of days, and then I'll glue it to a nightlight base, and I'll have myself a nightlight. At the beginning of the video I told you that there's another design that I'm working on right now that has some shading on it. This is similar to the dragonfly that I did a few days ago. There's a couple of design changes. I very rarely like to do two designs that are identical. So this one has a little bit different foliage, different design down here. Even though it looks like the same dragonfly, it is a different dragonfly. It's facing a different direction, and it is a different image. I'm not using the same image, and I didn't just spin it around to use on this one to say it's different. It is a completely different dragonfly. Although with the silhouette, you're not really going to be able to tell. What I want to show you here is how I'm going to do the moon, the shading on the moon. This is the egg that I started on last night, and then I decided, well, I might as well go ahead and do a video showing how I do some shading on it. So this one, I've already done all the outlines down to the white layer. This is going to stay black. There's no removal of any material here down to the blue layer. It's just going to stay black because I want it to look like the moon is shining on it from behind, and you're just seeing the outlines. Same thing with the dragonfly and the stick. Everything is outlined in all the way down to the white layer. The dragonfly, the wings I did not, and there's a reason for that. Is because I don't want a sharp outline on the dragonfly wings just yet, because they need to be almost transparent. I got this area down to almost white. This is what's going to be white once I'm done with the green stone. I'm not going to change the tip for anything. I'm just going to use the green stone to get all these darker layers, not quite as dark because the contrast is a little extreme for the moon. There's some lighter shades of gray, there's darker shades of gray, but it's all gray. There's nothing black on the moon surface itself. So I don't want any of these really harsh lines and contrasts on the moon. Oh, and when I'm doing a realistic image like this, I almost always will have a reference picture that I'm looking at. That way I can see where I'm going to have some of the different lighter and darker shades. Of course, when I'm doing portraits of real people, I have the black and white image that I did on the computer. Here you can see the difference between the really dark areas of gray and the lighter shades of gray. This is what I want to take it down to. All these dark layers, these dark areas rather, that's what I want to take it down to, is to where it's just noticeable as shading or on the surface of the moon. I don't want to leave it so dark. Alright guys, I don't really know what more I could show you that I haven't already shown you in this video. I appreciate your patience. As soon as I finish this live video, I'm going to go ahead and try to save it to Facebook. That way it's something that you can go back to and look at when it's more convenient for yourself. I know it's a really long video, but you know, some things just can't be shown in a edited and time-lapse photography type of video. Later on today, I will be making a nightlight, and I will carve this image out because I am going to do the stained glass technique on it. So I will go live with that video and show you how I pierce emu eggshell in anticipation of a stained glass nightlight. And keep an eye out for it. That'll be this afternoon though. Have a good day.